Well, and originally when I started planting cover crops, that was for soil erosion control. But since I've gotten into cover crops and have been planting them for many years, well, since 1993, I'm seeing many more benefits that I didn't realize would come, and one of them is being improved soil health. Healthy soil will produce a better crop. Also, cover crops will scavenge nitrogen that was left from the previous crop. If you have nitrogen in the soil, then it picks it up and puts it into the cover crop, and also along with other nutrients. And as you terminate the cover crop and then it begins to decay, it supplies nutrients to the following crop because they have been recycled and they're held onto held in the land or on the land where they're needed. Another good big advantage now with the palmer amaranth resistance to Roundup is that with a heavy cover crop such as rye that you're allowed to get 6 feet tall, and then I roll it down prior to planting, and it's a mat on the soil surface, and pigweed has a very tough time at getting through that mat. And in fact, we're getting good control of pigweed and other weeds with this heavy mat of cover crop laying on the soil surface. Now, it's not 100% control, but it goes a long way toward eliminating the pigweed that we have to deal with later on. Well, you have this heavy residue on top of the soil, and you conserve your moisture because evaporation from soil is almost eliminated, and this heavy cover crop can help you get you through a 2 to 3 week drought in a non-irrigated situation. Well, planting a cover crop is the most important to get it in planted on time, but sometimes Mother Nature doesn't cooperate. You can't get the previous crop out and get your cover crop planted timely. But one of the ways to help get around this is, particularly if you have peanuts, is go in and broadcast rye prior to digging the peanuts, or either prior to harvesting them, after digging them, and the incorporation from the equipment moving in the field will incorporate the rye seed enough that when you get sufficient moisture, it will come up. And that's a very inexpensive way to do it, because you're normally doing it with a small tractor and a small spreader attached to the tractor, and you can seed the rye very quickly and very efficiently, and that helps to gain some time rather than waiting until after the crop is harvested and then go in and plant. And I have aerial seeded rye. I spread it onto particularly a soybean crop prior to leaf drop, and also in cotton prior to defoliation. And this works real well. In fact, in 2009, had I done that, it would have been excellent, because we had all this rainfall that we normally don't have, and rye seed itself will germinate almost on top of the soil surface with sufficient moisture. You don't have to get much soil coverage to get a good stand of rye. Aerial seeding used to be, I haven't done it in 3 or 4 years, but at the time that I did it was comparable to the cost of actually drilling it with a no-till drill, because of having to use a tractor and a no-till drill, and the cost of the aerial application was about the same, and much faster. In an unirrigated field where we're going to plant either cotton or soybeans or peanuts, we like to terminate the cover crop at least 3 weeks prior to planting, because of you could have a soil moisture problem if you wait any later, because actively growing cover crop is pulling a lot of moisture out of the soil. And if you terminate it at least 3 weeks prior to planting your regular row crop, that hopefully during that 3 week period you're going to get a good rainfall, and if that occurs, and normally it does occur, we will have ample moisture to germinate seed that we're going to plant later on. So it is a management problem, and sometimes it doesn't work exactly like that, but in my 15 years of conservation tillage, I've always been able to plant a crop. I've never had to been delayed very long from planting a row crop in the spring because of insufficient moisture. Well, in an irrigated situation, the cover crop and the moisture situation is not as critical because you have an irrigation to supplement rainfall. And normally when I plant corn, which is always planted in under a center pivot, is we plant it behind normally a rye cover crop. And I allow the rye to grow as long as it can because corn is planted much earlier in the season than cotton or soybeans. And I don't have the growth on it that I would like to have because of the shorter growing season. So I'm allowed the rye to grow to grow 2 to 3 days prior to planting. I'll spray a herbicide on it to terminate it and then roll it down, and I'll actually plant in the green rye because the moisture consideration is no problem with the center pivot system. I've been rolling cover crops approximately 5 years, and I picked up the idea from Dr. Wayne Reeves. And I think he had gotten the idea from Brazil, and I'd seen some pictures of rollers that they used, and so we went to the shop and made us a roller out of some equipment that we used, equipment that we had on the farm that we were no longer using, and it's working very well for us, particularly in rye. By us using what we already had on hand, we've have a 18-foot wide roller that cost approximately $3,000 for materials and labor, and to operate it is almost nothing because it's not a hard implement to pull at all, and the economics of rolling are very good. Well, the advantage of having a wheat cover crop is that it doesn't grow as tall. You're not dealing with as much biomass, but you're not getting as much benefit from a cover crop as you would with a rye cover crop that produces much more biomass, although it presents a little bit different situation to plant into but it works real well. But I also like Italian ryegrass that I have in a field that's been naturally reseeding for the past 5 years, and the fact that I don't have to replant it every year, and the fact that it provides a very good cover, and it's also, I have learned how to plant into it. And the ryegrass has a much more massive root system than rye does. Therefore, it does a better job of recycling nutrients and also having root channels through the soil that the water can infiltrate into and to be stored in the soil for future use. By using this naturally occurring Italian ryegrass as a cover crop, it has eliminated the possibility of planting wheat into the field because you'd have to destroy the ryegrass first. So if I were to want to plant wheat in one of these fields that's been in Italian ryegrass for several years, I would probably start 2 years ahead of my planned wheat crop and kill it out with a glyphosate for 2 years to eliminate much of it as possible. So when I did plant a wheat crop, maybe it wouldn't interfere with it, although there are some good herbicides on the market today to help control Italian ryegrass in a growing wheat crop. I've been working in the past 2 or 3 years with annual ryegrass as a cover crop, and so far it's been very successful. It's not a hard crop to plant into. You don't get the above ground biomass that you have from rye, but you have much better or much more biomass below the ground because it has such a tremendous root system. And the root system actually goes deeper in the soil than rye will. And I'm hoping, at this point we don't really know, that over time as we use our annual ryegrass, that with the penetration that the root does of the soil during the growing season, that we can come in the spring and plant a cash crop such as corn, wheat, not wheat, but soybeans, peanuts, or cotton, and not subsoil, because we do live in an area where we do have a compacted layer down about 10 to 12 inches we have to break through. But with the use of continuous use of annual ryegrass, this may eliminate a subsoil in operation, and if it does, it's going to greatly improve the bottom line because of the horsepower requirements to pull the subsoil and all the expenses that go along with it versus just planting a crop strictly no-till.